ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the best sports show in Kansas City. This is Any Given Sunday on KUAW Radio, where sports come alive. Join your hosts, the awesome voice, and Coach 24 as they dive into the latest sports news, analysis, and excitement. From the biggest games to the most thrilling moments, they've got it all covered. So sit back, relax, and get ready for an hour of unbeatable sports action. This is Any Given Sunday on KUAW Radio.
Are we ready? Yep. Oh, hello, and welcome to the Weekend Needs. This is Any Given Sunday on KUAW, and Happy New Year to everybody. Hopefully it'll be an awesome 2025, just like for us. So we were running a little behind, and so we're trying to get organized. So I have got it going. To my right here, my brother with another mother, Coach 24, Darwin Penny. How are you doing this evening?
We're great. Happy 2025 to everyone. We're excited to be back here and looking forward to talking about these playoffs.
Absolutely. So, and running the show, the man behind the scenes, Mr. DJ Scatter, Mr. George Walker. How are you doing this evening, sir?
Hey, I'm doing just fine in this new year.
Oh, absolutely. So, yes, I am wearing my one win closer to a three-peat, and I've got to thank Rick Thompson at RT's Awards and T-shirts for getting these all printed up for me. Mr. Walker has his on, and as you can tell, Coach 24 is a little under the weather. He had some surgery at the end of the last year, and he is healing up, so he won't be able to wear his, but maybe we can get a picture with him just holding it or something.
Absolutely.
So how are you feeling, sir?
Making steady progress each and every day, and so we're just looking forward to complete healing and get back out to doing our regular duties once spring training starts.
Absolutely. So, and speaking of that, we've got football playoffs, we've got NFL, we've got college football, but first we're going to start off with Royals baseball. And if you can give us a little – now I know that we signed a pitcher that we picked up late in the year last year. Mm-hmm. We signed him to a one-year deal. What is going on with the process of the Royals this year?
So looking forward to pitchers and catchers reporting. If you can believe, we're actually inside of a month. The pitchers and catchers reporting. The biggest thing this offseason was trying to make sure that our rotation was in a position to give us the same type of success that we had last year. But in order to do that, we needed to figure out how we were going to get somebody who could potentially hit in front of Bobby Witt Jr. One of the crazy stats that we had last year. I mean, think about what Bobby did. Bobby leading major leagues in average, leading major leagues in hits, and was one of the top RBI guys. He still came to the plate last year, over 400 plate appearances with nobody on in front of him. So we really got to work at getting us a leadoff hitter and somebody who has the ability to get on base. And so we made a trade with Cincinnati where we traded our number 4 starter, Brady Singer, former first rounder for us, to Cincinnati for Jonathan India and a player to be named later. And so Jonathan India is a very, very athletic second base, third base, left field type guy. The only problem is he almost looks like Michael Massey and stuff. So a little bit faster, and we try to get him back stealing bases, but he's always had success with a good on-base percentage, and that's what we're hoping, that he can be that catalyst at the top of the lineup, consistently getting on bases to give Bobby not only something to hit in, but then adding more to the lineup with hopefully having Vinny Pasquantino having a breakout year really to settle into who he is. I mean, he was one of the best RBI men in baseball before breaking his thumb. Looking for another continued success with Salvador. With Freddie Fermin coming on, we feel like we got the best 1-2 punch when it comes to catching. When your backup catcher is one of the finalists for a Golden Glove, that speaks volumes for you. But it's also continuing to lengthen out Salvi's career, and we're trying to figure out what does that look like so that he can finish his career as a Royal. This year is actually the last year of guaranteed money for him. We have a club option for him in 2026, and so we're going to figure out how do we make it where, does he sign another contract? Do we extend the current contract, whatever it is, so that he retires a Royal? He says he wants to play until he's 40 years old, and this is going to be his age 35 season. And so, it's a pretty exciting time. We feel like the bullpen still needs a little bit of help, so we're still open to that. And then who is going to be that bat off the bench, somebody that you can count on to be a spot starter? We may move some guys around this year, and then we've got to get some production from the outfield. Last year, that was really our Achilles heel throughout the season, is not having that offensive production from the outfield. We weren't elite overall as a hitting team, but we were clutch. We got the hits when we needed them, and we were always right on time. We were one of the best teams in baseball with runners in scoring position. So it's not always how many hits you get, but when you get them. And
right.
So we were able to do that. And I think we're still in the hunt for possibly, one more bat, open to some trade ideas to continue to try to get better production out of our outfield. And so we'll see what happens. We'd like to be more proactive on this end than to wait till we get to the trade deadline, because once you get to the trade deadline, everybody's asking price goes up.
Exactly. So let me ask you this question before the question that I wanted to ask. I saw that Blake Mitchell in the minors is the sixth highest rated minor league catcher in baseball. What's his future look like with the Royals? So
I think Blake Mitchell is a dynamite prospect. He right now has the ability to hit and run. He still has his legs up under him. He was a tremendous athlete in high school, played multiple sports, and so he does everything well. He catches well, throws the ball well. He's got, some growing to do, but looks like he's going to probably start this year in high A. He hit 18 home runs last year in low A, playing basically as an 18-year-old in that league. And so he is going to be in camp as a non-roster invitee. We've got him. We've got also one of our local kids here, Carter Jensen, who is just behind. As far as our organizational top prospects, Carter is like right behind Blake Mitchell. And then also going to be at spring training this year is Jack Caglione, who was the college version of Shohei Ohtani. We have yet to put him on the mound. We've only allowed him to hit. I got a chance to see him out in the Arizona Fall League. And, this kid, when he hits a ball, it's a grown man behind it. And
wow.
He really, really can light up for the guys who get caught up into exit velo, and he can really light up a ball, and he can hit the ball hard the other way. He can hit the ball out the backside of the park. So as a left-handed hitter, it's nothing for him to hit a ball out of left field. And so this kid, I think he could press for a job before the end of the year.
But probably not at the beginning?
Probably not at the beginning. It's too big of a jump, right? He hadn't had a full season in the minors. I think he needs to play at least, a half a season of Double-A before you even start to consider, him even being potentially a call-up or anything like that. Think about how fast Bobby's ascent was.
Right.
Bobby, what would have been Bobby's first full season in the minors was the COVID year, so there was no minor league play. And as a result, we took Bobby to our alternate site, knowing that he wasn't going to go over to a major league game, but those where you could keep your little extra players. But he got to see guys who were on the verge of making the major leagues. He was competing against those guys, and you could see, man, this guy, he's really special. And so instead of him going to low A or high A ball, we jumped him all the way to Double-A. After having only played a half a season of rookie ball, we jumped into Double-A. Halfway through his Double-A season, we sent him to Triple-A, and he winds up being minor league player of the year that year, and then brought him to camp as a non-roster invitee. And you couldn't send him back. And next thing you know, 2022, he's in our opening day roster, and he's never spent another day in the minor leagues. And we saw him grow his first year at hitting about 250 with about 75 RBIs, and still trying to find it. And then year 2, he starts out pretty slow, and he's starting to get it. And then all of a sudden, right around the All-Star break, boom, it clicked. And you can make an argument he's been the best player in baseball ever since then. And so, and to have him signed up long term, it's the best decision we've made in a long time. So,
absolutely. So, Caglione, you said that you think he'll go in the later in the year. Now, saying this, even with Bobby Witt Jr., everybody goes up the pole, go single A, double A, triple A. Do you think he will jump from double A straight to the leagues, or do you think he will end up going to the triple A?
Just based on our history and who we are as an organization, I would see him, going from double A to triple A, not from double A straight to the majors. I can't remember the last guy that we've had that has made that jump. I am one of the people who still believes that you can make that jump from double A to the big leagues if you really go and dominate double A, not just play well, but dominate. Once you get to that level, you have enough talent to play in the major leagues. The question is your experience level, and then make that a little bit of adjustment in AAA, because you're dealing with more experienced pitchers if you are a hitter, or if you're a pitcher. Now you got hitters that are a little bit more experienced, guys who have some big league, because it's a melting pot at AAA. You got guys with big league experience, some guys that don't. And so it gets you in a position where you are ready to go and compete at the major league level. But you get to the major league level, you've got to get over the awe and the bigger crowds and everything else, and the demands of your time, and everybody calling you wanting tickets, and and deal with all those outside distractions to go out there and then be consistent, right? It's not a lack of ability, it's a lack of consistency when guys don't make it in the major league. So.
Yeah, and I guess Bobby Witt Jr. had the advantage of growing up with his dad, Bobby Witt Sr., which kind of like Patrick Mahomes, he watched his father grow up in the professional side, and it helps him. Now, I don't know if Caglione had his father was in the leagues or anything like that, so I know that could be it could be the reason why he either advances or not advances.
Well, I think it's an advantage when you've got guys that have parents who played in the major leagues, played at a high level. The Bobby Witt Juniors, the Ken Griffey Juniors, guys like that, who they can just pick those guys' brain. And the other thing is they've been around the clubhouse. They've been around major league people their whole lives, and so they're not in awe of anybody, and they feel like they belong. And so Bobby is just an outstanding young man, first and foremost, over what he is as a baseball player. And he gets along with everybody, and he just goes out and he plays hard every night. And when your best player plays like that every night, it elevates the level of everybody else. We see that here in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, and he plays hard every night. He benefited from his father being a professional athlete, not necessarily an NFL player, but he grew up around Major League Baseball clubhouse, and so he was around big-time people all the time, and so no scenario is too big for him. And so he's been trained to do that. And I think Bobby falls right in line with that. Like I said, Caglione is just a freak of a specimen, man, and just big, strong, powerful guy. And I think there's upside there. The interesting part is will we ever take a chance and tap into that pitching arm?
Absolutely. So that would be pretty cool. But I think you guys, as you're saying, that he's probably be more of a batter than a pitcher.
I just think they're trying to figure out how to utilize that arm, because this is a guy who he could start or he could close. I mean, he was 95 to 98 in college. It's a big arm, but it's hard to hit. The one thing is if he fails as a hitter, you can always go back and pitch him. Trying to do both, we see the experiment with Shohei and how it's gone, right? Trying to figure out, how do you get him enough rest? Originally the Angels would just only let him DH. They never let him play the outfield. And so you just gotta, how to be able to pitch, you gotta throw.
Right.
And so, and then you get guys that, if they are a different type batter, then you potentially expose their throwing arm to being hit by a pitch, all those type of things. And so, but I think, a guy that has his power potential, you've got to experiment with that bat first, because there's not a lot of guys that have that consistent 30 to 40 home run potential, and that's what he has. And so you have to ask yourself, would you rather have a guy out there every day who can hit you 30, 40 home runs, or a guy who's going to play once every fifth day?
Absolutely. So with that, you were talking about trying to get more batters, more production from the outfield. Did the signing of Soto hurt the Royals in trying to sign players, because the fact that his contract, is a huge one, and then the players just below him were getting just as big of the contracts?
Yeah, he's certainly altered the market. I think it slowed the market down, because now everybody's looking. All these guys went back in and recalibrated what they thought they might get this offseason, and so everything kind of slowed down. So there haven't been a whole lot of deals, a whole lot of signings, and but there's also been a guy like a Michael Sakura, who was a pitcher for the White Sox last year. I remember writing a report, and he was a guy that I thought, man, he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. He's still only 27 years old. He's a guy that I think we could bring in for, relatively low dollars, because he missed a lot of time last year due to injury. And all of a sudden the Nationals give him $9 million a year, and it totally blew the reliever market. And so what Soto's got, everybody, you can go back in and say you don't have what Soto has, right?
Right.
And I ain't talking about just playing wise, but you're also not a free agent at 25 years old.
Right. You're still under the ball clubs.
Absolutely. He hit free. When you hit free agency as early as he did, as early as Bryce Harper hit, as early as Mike Trout, those are the guys who set the astronomical numbers as far as what you're going to get in a long-term deal at 15 years, and $760 million. I personally thought last year was as far as anybody would go with Ohtani. I had no idea that they would pay him more than what Ohtani got, because in my eyes, in Ohtani, you were getting two for one.
Right. And
even if you knew that he wasn't going to pitch the first year there, it's still, what would you pay for the best hitter in baseball? You could say, well, I'd pay at least $30 million. What would I pay for the best pitcher? $30 million. Well, that's $600 million over 10 years.
Right.
And they gave him $700, because that was my number last year. I said he'll get $600 million, and they fooled me. He got $700. I thought Soto would probably get $500, maybe $600 million. That number just blew me, because again, other than Ohtani, I didn't think anybody would get really more money than Mike Trout got.
Right. So was it due to the fact that all the rich boys, the Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers, the Angels, were bidding for him so aggressively? Is that what caused the high pay for that?
I mean, it's pretty much like that with anybody who is a high-profile free agent. You know that the large market teams are going to go after that person. But I think it comes down to what his agent, Scott Boras, sits down and says, here's our number. Who's willing to match our number? And this is why I think my guy's worth this amount of dollars. And we're looking for a long-term contract, not just 10 years, right? He's finally going to be somebody who actually has a contract longer than Bobby Bonilla.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
He'll still have 5 years left on his contract when Bobby's finally expires.
Oh, my goodness.
But Bobby's contract goes past Bryce Harper.
Yep, absolutely, and he's still making the money. I'm telling you what, you can consider him the smartest man in baseball, I'll tell you. So now, one more question. Trevor Bauer. He's been sort of a malcontent, but a great pitcher. Does the Royals look at him, and possibly bring him to camp?
We had conversations around him. I'm one of the guys that's in the Trevor Bauer camp. Like, I take that arm and bring him to camp and just sit down with him and allow the culture and the context of our locker room calm him down. Be who you are, okay? But it's hard to be around Salvi every day and not have a smile on your face.
Right.
It's going to be hard to be around Bobby Witt Jr. and be a malcontent. It's going to be hard for you to be around Vinny Pasquantino and be that type of guy. I think it's the culture and Q and the coaching staff that could do that, Whether you're willing to take that risk, we don't know. How big a gamble is it, you know? And so, and because he is already at a certain level, the price that he comes in on has to be a fair market price.
Right.
And so, but, certainly his name came up in conversations. How hard do we do a deep dive and try to get around people who have been around him on a daily basis and see has he made any adjustments or not? Because the one thing that we have is the chemistry on this team, and you don't want to take a chance on losing that for anybody. And sometimes you just got to say no, and you pass up on a guy that physically you say, man, this guy should be able to help us, but what's the risk for the reward?
Right. Absolutely.
But a lot of people said that when we brought Aroldis Chapman in, but we were able to bring Aroldis in. He was a model citizen here for us, and then we were able to flip him for our current number one pitcher in Cole Reagans.
Yeah, absolutely, and became one of the best free agent signings in Royals history for at least in the last 25, 30 years.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty cool. So we did talk a lot of baseball, and actually, so we got the Super Bowl, which is on my birthday, February 9th, guys, everybody. So hopefully I get a birthday present of the three-peat. But saying that, right after the Super Bowl, how long will it be before spring training or the pitchers and catchers report? Is it?
It's going to be the next week.
It'll be next.
It'll be the next week because we're at about 24 days right now for pitchers and catchers to report.
Wow. And it just goes on, and man, I'm telling you what, we just talked about football in the training camp and figuring out who's gonna go to the Super Bowl, or the Chiefs gonna three-peat, blah blah blah, and now it is all done. And saying that, we're gonna switch to college football, and this is the latest that college football has ever been. They got the national championship game, which is on Monday, the 20th. You got Ohio State. You've got Notre Dame. Let me ask you this. What did you think of the teams and how it ran this year? I know this is the first year of the 12-man team. Mm-hmm. Like Penn State, they dominated, but everybody will say, well, they dominated Boise State and SMU, and they really didn't belong in there, even though they had the credentials to make it in there and everything else. Did everything work out to where it's Ohio State and Notre Dame?
So I think it did. I'm still of the opinion that we really still should be an 8-team playoff. I think 8 is enough. I was looking at a post that I made 10 years ago, 2014, and I said that the college football season is too long.
Right.
We have all these lesser bowls, right? And so you're still trying to figure out a way how you didn't disband the bowls, but how do you finally get to settle it on the field and not in the newspaper? And I think we've got it right, and it's now especially There's not Power 5 anymore. It's Power 4 because the Pac-12, as we know it, doesn't exist anymore.
Right, exactly.
So you got 4 conferences. I think you take those 4 champions and then 4 at-large teams, because I really think there's only about 8 teams in the country who could actually win a national championship. 9, 10, 11, and 12 can't win a national championship, right? They can win one game, right? They can Cinderella for one game, but they can't go through the gauntlet of I'm going to win 3 games in a row. You're just not going to be able to do it because you're going to be going up against talent that you haven't gone up against all year. It's set up for either an SEC team or a Big Ten team to win this thing. It's going to be hard for the ACC, and it's going to be hard for the Big 12. And so those teams go up against a deeper conference schedule than the other ones. You can still have a really good team in those other conferences, but the week in and week out grind that you have to go through in the Big Ten and the SEC is going to prepare. So, and you could lose the SEC championship game or you could lose the Big Ten championship game and still win the national championship. I believe that wholeheartedly. You just have a bad day, right? You don't win the championship game, right? You know, like this year, I thought Texas was better than Georgia, but Georgia beat them twice.
Right. Yeah.
You know, they beat them. They beat them twice, and we don't know what would have happened if Texas doesn't self-destruct.
Right.
You know, against Ohio State, you're down a touchdown inside the 5. It's 1st and goal.
Right. They weren't they at the 1 yard?
They were
line?
at the 1 yard line.
And they're doing a pitch. That kind of reminded me of Seattle and New England.
Absolutely. So you went from potentially tying or even taking a chance on going for 2 and winning it and playing for a national championship, yet they had lost 2 games to the same team in the conference. They lost to them in the regular season game and in the SEC championship game. So I think 8 is the number. You get your 4 conference championships and then 4 at large bids, and so that could be 2 teams from the 2 biggest conferences, and then maybe the champion of a lesser conference like a Boise State or whatever who goes through undefeated, and you give them a chance to go in and fight the big dogs, you know, or
Notre Dame.
Right. Whoever.
Right.
You know, as an independent, whatever, you get an opportunity to go out there. And so I think that's an opportunity that can be had. But I just don't think college football is deep enough where 12 teams have a legitimate shot. Now, at the end of the day, that's an extra week of playing. That's extra revenue for everybody. And I'm not here to count nobody's pockets. But the reality for me is 8 teams, and let's go at it for 3 weeks and be done.
Right. Well, here's my issue. You had the top 4 teams. They had a bye. So they went from being off like a week or 2 to like 21 to 28 days. I mean, Oregon was the best team in the nation. They were undefeated. They beat Ohio State earlier in the season, and then they did not play for several weeks, whereas Ohio State came in, they played a game, they lit up, and I can't think of the team right now. It was the 9th. Oh, it was Tennessee. They lit up Tennessee,
So
which was one of the better ones. But, you know, Oregon is like cold. College players need to play more consistently. Yes, they have the grind. Unlike the NFL, you know, you're talking about men. Travis Kelce, 35 years old. Chris Jones, 29, 30 years old. They needed that type of break, and we will see Saturday, how much that affected them or if they needed it and everything else. But college players can't be off that long and then try to just jump in and take on a team. And all 4 of the bye teams all lost in that first round.
Yeah.
So when you say 8, I totally agree, because then you go 1-8, 2-7, and they're all playing. Not one team is sitting out because I think they were so adamant about making sure somebody had a bye week. Almost like the NFL where the top team had a bye week, and it just totally just killed it.
Right. The difference is you're talking about a week versus, in the college conference championships, you're usually playing the first week of December so that kids can take finals and then have a Christmas break.
Right.
Right. So now when you're playing now a New Year's Day or day after New Year's Day bowl, we're talking about almost a month, to your point, that they haven't had a chance to get out there and put the pads back on. Yeah, you've healed up some injuries, you've done some things, but while this other team is out there grinding, giving like that, and so here we are. I mean, at the end of the day, through the rankings of the seedings, we got number 7 and number 8 playing for the national championship.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and that's why I say that's to me that's the number. I don't think you need to go to 9, 10, 11, and 12, but 9, 10, 11, and 12 bring more money.
Exactly. And eventually they're going to go to 16 teams. So I know it's going to happen. If they jump from –
They do that at the other levels, so I could see them trying to do it. If you go 16, then there's no reason to have a bye.
Right. I get that.
4 weeks of football.
Right. Absolutely. And
if you're going to do that, to me, you need to then drop a regular season game because now that season now is almost as long as the NFL season.
So when you are debating on the teams that should belong in there, does Boise State belong in there? Does SMU? Does Alabama? Should it go through a computer? Because when you're using humans to decide who it is, so let's just say I don't like Alabama, so I may vote against Alabama, and whether they deserve it or not. Whereas in a computer, it will at least give you the facts.
I think that at the end of the day, there's a lot of computer involved in it because we're looking at strength of schedule. What happens is when you're the third team in that power conference, that's where people get bent out of shape. Is I don't want to give them 3 teams.
Right.
I'll give them 2. We know the best 2 teams are fine. It's 3, it's 4. Where people who their teams play in the SEC, let's just have 8 SEC teams and the rest of y'all can go home.
Right. Absolutely.
That's the way those proponents are.
Uh-huh.
And so I think it's once you get to that third team, should a third team that's an Alabama, should they be in? Should, if that's Tennessee or whoever, because the SEC did wind up getting, 3 teams in, and we're begging for a 4th.
Right.
Right? Because if you look at who Alabama lost to, and the scores that they lost by, it wasn't that much, and they lost to teams that were in the playoff. Except for the Vandy game.
Right.
Yeah. But they lost to a really good Texas team.
Yeah.
Things like that. So that's what people will start to balk at. Once you we're going to give you 2, because we live in the country now where everybody gets a trophy and they want every conference to have representation as far as the mid-major conferences go in,
right.
The Mountain West, and then, that's fine. That's fine. But it's that third team where there's going to be a problem. They're not going to want to see a third team from the SEC, and they're not going to want to see a third team from the Big Ten. We're still trying to place an emphasis on winning a conference championship, but not get penalized as a runner-up for being in a strong conference. It's the third team that creates the problem.
Right. And with that, we are at halftime on Any Given Sunday on KUAW, Coach 24, George Walker, DJ Scatter, and me, the Awesome Voice. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we get back, we're going to talk about the playoffs. Playoffs? Yes, we got the playoffs. We are at the final 4 games, the top 8 of the NFL, and we will be right back. All right, we're back for the second half of Any Given Sunday on KUAW. Coach 24 with me, the DJ Scatter running the show. I am Awesome Voice, and we are in the playoffs. We're in the divisional round. Last week I went 5-1. Coach 24 went 4-2. So did Marvin Durant, and Max Gershon had another perfect week. He went 6-0. So. He finally started performing well and has been doing great. So, and on his NWKS show on 102.5, the Morning Blitz with Ross Volker and him, you guys need to listen to that. Get on Facebook. I believe you can get on X and YouTube also. But they are from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the mornings, Monday through Friday. Listen to it. It is a great show. So anyway, Max, thank you. And hopefully you will do pretty well again this week. We've got our picks for this week, but we've got the 4 games, and I'm gonna leave Kansas City last. But we're going to go to the NFC, and we've got 2 games. We've got 2 top teams versus 2 teams that really wasn't in there. You've got the Rams going to Philadelphia, and you've got Washington with Jalen Daniels, who's really performed very well. They took care of Shaker Baker and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'm telling you what, the playoffs make a big difference because you go, okay, well, in the regular season, they did this, they did that, they handled everything else. When it comes to the playoffs, because look at Justin Herbert, C.J. Stroud has had experience winning playoffs. Yes, this is only his second year. Herbert is in his 5th and 6th year, and he still has not won a playoff game yet.
Yeah, I think it's been a challenge, and most people who will look at Justin Herbert will say that he probably took a step back this year to trying to have a more balanced offense and dealing with a new coach. He actually now finally has a really good coach, but Harbaugh is on the conservative side, and so his individual numbers weren't quite as good, but they started to play well at the end of the year. I was really surprised. Based on the way Houston played the last 4 weeks of the season, that they went out and handled the Chargers. But you can't go out and turn the ball over the way they did and expect to win. And so I think next year is going to be a huge year for Justin Herbert and the Chargers with having a second year under the leadership of Harbaugh and how that's going to affect that culture and them being able to bring in different players and actually probably be the biggest threat to the Chiefs, even though Sean Payton would say otherwise.
Absolutely. So, and I said we were going to the NFC, and I turned around and jumped to the AFC. So, as my friend Tony would say, squirrel. So, but Washington did the same thing. Jalen Daniels had a great game. Baker Mayfield made one mistake, and it cost them the game. So now you've got Washington playing Detroit. So now everybody's thinking that Jalen Daniels is going to light it up against the Detroit. But Detroit's defense is starting to play better, even though they have been an absolute mash unit with all the injuries and everything else. Now, from what I've heard, Aiden Hutchinson could play in the Super Bowl if Detroit makes it that far. But saying this, I still think Detroit will have the experience to beating the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, I think Detroit is your classic steps on the tier to get to a championship. You get in the playoffs a year, you make a run the next year, and now here's year 3 where you're ready now to old bum Phillips kick the door in.
Right.
And so I think they have been consistent all year. They have played well with their running game. Jared Goff has taken care of the ball. They have the ability to be explosive on offense, both in the running game. They have an experienced offensive line, arguably the best line in football. And I think it's going to come down to who can control the clock. The one thing that the Commanders did last week was they controlled the clock. They limited the number of plays that Tampa Bay only ran 45 offensive plays. And so they were explosive with Mike Evans and Baker just feeding him. And it still came down to that turnover at what changed the game. But Washington controlled the clock. They controlled the tempo. Jaden Daniels was really great on third down and extending plays, moving the chains. And so those are the things that Detroit's going to have to be able to do is get off the field on third down and give themselves an opportunity. They have the ground game that can control the clock. And then all of a sudden you may start to see Jaden press a little bit because now he doesn't have as many snaps to deal with, whereas last week he had unlimited number of snaps and controlled the tempo of the game, which gave him more confidence so that late in the game, which in his rookie year, he has shown that he's a great player late in games.
Yeah, absolutely. So this will be really huge for Jaden Daniels. So, but saying that, I still think that Detroit will beat the Washington Commanders.
I would agree that Detroit playing at home, I think they have a lot to prove that they are truly the best team in the NFC.
Yep. And that is on Saturday night after the Chiefs and Houston game. And then you've got the Sunday game. You've got the Rams against Philadelphia. Now, Philadelphia looked like they were just in complete control of Green Bay. But Green Bay just did, whereas last year Green Bay just totally dominated Dallas. They didn't. They just totally fell apart against Philadelphia, but Philadelphia really didn't play that great of a game.
It's called expectations. Last year, nobody had expectations with Green Bay. They were playing with house money, right? So they went in with a loosey-goosey game plan, and Jordan Love threw the ball, okay, all wild, and they did the thing that you have to do to Dallas. They got them behind, and it was all Green Bay all the time. Well, this year there were expectations on them, and so they had to learn. They still had a good season. They had a good team, banged up a few times, went out and got Josh Jacobs. I think they were a more complete team this year than they were last year. Yeah. Now they got to learn how to win. Yep. Now they got to learn how to win, and now you got to learn how to deal with expectations. And I think that was the biggest thing for them is having to deal with expectations. Though I do think Philly, you can make an argument that Philly's the best team in the league, but you shouldn't be dominating a game when your quarterback goes into the third quarter with only 37 yards passing. But that's exactly where they were. And so, but Philly's D-line, I think, is what really creates the problem. And so I think that will be the challenge. But I'm not – it wouldn't surprise me if the Rams went in there and won that game. For me, the second half of the year, the Rams have been so much better than they were early in the year. The only challenge is the guy who had kick-started them, Kyron Williams, at running back is banged up. Don't know if he's going to be able to go. And to me, that's huge because I think it only enhances who Matt Stafford is when he can play action pass and they've got a running game to go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the trenches is the key to this game because the Rams had 9 sacks against Minnesota. Minnesota had a decent offensive line. Mm-hmm. Now, Philadelphia is considered one of the best offensive lines in football, even without Jason Kelce, who retired after last year. But saying that, I think if the Rams can get to Jalen Hurts and shut him down, if Jalen Hurts is throwing for 37 yards after the half, and the Rams will be going to the NFC Championship game, and I actually do believe that the Rams will beat the Philadelphia Eagles and go to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, the best possible scenario for the Rams is to somehow win this game and then play Detroit and get back indoors.
The Eagles? Or the Rams?
The Rams.
Oh, okay.
They're an indoor team.
Right.
Stafford has played the majority of his career, all of his career, on an indoor dome team.
Right.
He handles that better than he handles bad weather. Even though he was in the black and blue division, he was just really, really good when he played indoors.
Right.
And I think if they can get past this one, man, it sets up for a great match. Him going back to Detroit to play against Golf, they were traded for each other.
Right.
I mean, that you talking about making a movie scenario.
Uh-huh.
This would really be an outstanding NFC Championship game if those two teams were to be there. But it wouldn't surprise me. But at the end of the day, I think I'm going to probably pick Philadelphia to win that game just because they're playing at home, and I think the elements could present a problem for the Rams.
Gotcha. So we've got the two games in the NFC. Now we go to the AFC, which is arguably probably be the best game of the weekend. The Baltimore Ravens versus the Buffalo Bills. Now, saying this, it is the game of redemption, and it's also the game where the quarterback is still going to be criticized for not being able to make it to move on to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, it's interesting. Both of these guys are vying to be on that next level to be up there where there's Mahomes and then there's everybody else, right? And who's going to be the leader of that next group or start to actually put some threat to Mahomes and his supremacy. And both of these guys are right there. Both of them have had outstanding years and led their teams to great seasons. But one of them is going to go home having to eat that no meat sandwich again, you know?
Yeah.
And it's going to be tough. I think Lamar has just been outstanding this year and only got better with having Derrick Henry. And then, Josh Allen has basically put Buffalo on his back. Yeah, he got a running game late in the year that turned out to be much better than anybody anticipated. But, nobody thought much once Diggs was no longer there. What is he going to do with this young core of receivers and two okay tight ends? One of them got a chance to be really good because he's young, and then their defense not quite the same. Von Miller's banged up. He's not the player that he was back in 2015-16. And so Josh Allen put them on his back, and he really did. He carried me. I gained a whole new level of respect for Josh Allen this year and his ability to throw the ball and to make plays off script and to do all the things that he does for that team. But I think Baltimore has a better roster top to bottom. It's going to come down to who flinches first, who makes a mistake, who turns the ball over. But if that big night train of Derrick Henry gets going, it's going to be lights out.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, saying this, the thing that I was impressed with Josh Allen is the fact that he kind of changed his philosophy because he was kind of just a more of like Brett Favre type.
He was reckless.
He was absolutely reckless. And then he realized they started losing players, and then everybody was doubting Buffalo. They thought their run was done and everything. And then he changed his philosophy and became a better quarterback. Now, saying this, who do you pick for the MVP, Jackson or Allen?
I would, if I had a vote, Lamar would get my vote. I think overall he had just a little bit better season. Who is more valuable to their team? All I know is Josh Allen. I don't know where Buffalo would have been without him, but we've seen the Ravens without Lamar.
Right.
That offense ain't nowhere close to as dynamic as it is. You thought that he might not have his best year passing with having a 1,900-yard rusher. He had his best year passing the ball. And so, some people want to bring quarterback wins into it. Well, if we're going to bring quarterback wins into it, then Mahomes gets the MVP. And so – but I think at the end of the day, I would vote for Lamar, and it's not to slight Josh Allen in any way, but I don't want to see Lamar either get penalized because they say, well, he's already won 2.
Right.
It's got nothing to do with it.
I totally agree with that. But a lot of times I've seen quarterbacks or offensive players who should have won the MVP and they gave it to somebody else, like Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers should not have won as many MVPs as he did. I just don't think he was that great. Yes, he's a good quarterback. He will be a Hall of Famer, unfortunately, but the fact is, a lot of times they pick him, and they picked him over Patrick Mahomes, where Patrick Mahomes had a way better year, but they gave it to Aaron Rodgers. So I'd almost say that you just split it, that you just say the tie for both of them, because they both helped their team become successful. Now, saying this, Lamar Jackson has Derrick Henry, so he has that advantage. That's why I would give just the slight edge to Allen, because he really didn't have all the, that type of player to help him, and he did it more by himself. So that's,
I get it. We do have there of a shared award way back with McNair and Peyton Manning. So there is the opportunity for that, but we shall see. Like I said, when you go down and you look at the numbers, Lamar's numbers are slightly better. When you look at the value, Josh probably has a slightly greater value to his team. But it's tough when you're an all-time great player like a Mahomes, whatever, or like Michael Jordan. I mean, you could have made an argument for Michael Jordan to win the MVP in NBA every year, right? When Larry Bird was at his prime, when Magic was at his prime, that's the nature of the beast. When you have guys that are all-time performers, and so I think every year Lamar is going to be in that conversation. This is really the first year that Patrick really wasn't in the conversation about MVP.
Yeah, I totally agree. But saying that, I think Andy Reid deserves Coach of the Year for everything he's done. And, yeah, there are teams that lost a lot of players, but the Chiefs lost a lot of players that people were criticizing. Patrick Mahomes was having his worst year. He's a horrible quarterback. He can't do this and do that, but yet they went 15-1, and I'm not talking about Denver because that was just them resting up. But they went 15-1 where everybody else had at least 2 losses or more. I mean, what he did was a phenomenal job. Now, saying this and getting back to Baltimore and Buffalo, who do you have?
I'm gonna go with the Ravens. I think, like I say, top to bottom, just a better roster. I know they're going on the road. Weather won't be a factor because it gets just as cold in Baltimore. Yeah. And I think that Lamar is playing like a man possessed, and I think the deciding factor is Derrick Henry.
Yep. And my decision is I have Baltimore too, but the difference will be the defenses. Both of them, I think, can put up points, as many as possible, but I think it's going to be who can shut down the other team at the most important point. And I think Baltimore right now has a slightly better defense than the Buffalo Bills. And with that, I also have the Baltimore Ravens.
Good.
And now we go to Arrowhead, and we've got Houston and Kansas City. Now, Houston played Kansas City in Week 16. They only lost by 8 points, so a lot of people are going, hey, they had a great game against the Chargers. 4 interceptions, 4 sacks, shutting down Justin Herbert. But now you're going up against a very well-rested Kansas City Chiefs team.
Yeah, that's going to be the key. The Chiefs are well-rested. The question will be, does well-rested mean rusty for a team that offensively this year wasn't its best offensive year? What are they going to be able to do? But you can't pick against the Chiefs because Andy Reid off of a bye week is just, he's phenomenal throughout his career. That gave him a few extra days to draw up a few more plays in the dirt, and he'll do some things like that. Will they be able to play well defensively is the main thing. And then to me, as long as it doesn't turn into a 30-point shootout, that would be the time that I said, well, you can't shoot out with the Chiefs now is actually, if I was going to try to beat them, that'd be the way I try to beat them is in a shootout.
Right. But my thing is that I think for Houston to win, it had to be a very low-scoring game. Both teams scoring under 20 points. I think Kansas City, their offense has been gelling. Yes, they had a lot of rest, but they had a lot of injuries that they needed to get healed up. You look at Houston, and they have great young players, but a lot of them are coming in limping, and not saying that it's going to stop them and everything, but the fact is that they're going to come in not totally 100%, and this is the best healthy Kansas City team all year long. Outside of Rashid Rice, you virtually have everybody. And, Patrick Mahomes' ankle is much better. He's had 3 weeks of rest on it. I mean, come on, you give Patrick Mahomes 3 weeks of rest. And what we were saying about college and pros, Andy Reid in training camp trained these guys, worked hard. They had the hardest, from what I've all heard, is that Andy Reid has the toughest camp out of every team. So they prepare for this time. That's the reason why they have a shot at making history. And so saying that, the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think they can win by 10 points or more.
Yeah, I mean, they are a better football team than the Houston Texans. The question is, does something freakish happen? Is there an opportunity where at the end of the game, instead of Patrick Mahomes having the ball in his hand, that it's a close game and C.J. Stroud has the ball in his hand and he's more than capable of making a play? Does something like that, do they get to kick the last kick, or in a situation like that? So, I mean, at the end of the day, everything points to the Chiefs winning this game, the success that the Chiefs have had at Arrowhead in the Mahomes Reid era. Everything points to them being successful, and I don't see why this would be any different. The only thing that is somewhat beneficial for the Texans is it's not as cold as it was last year when Miami came up here.
I know, it's been freezing all week, and I'm delivering mail out here, and then now all of a sudden it started warming up, and it's like, really?
Right. So that's the only thing that for me helps Houston out a little bit, is because it won't really get back cold again here till like late Sunday, early Monday, where it's going to be down close to zero during the King holiday. So,
right.
But yeah, I don't see the Chiefs getting beat off of a bye week with Andy Reid's history.
Gotcha. So we are near the end of Any Given Sunday on KUAW, but we still have the best subject and segment of the show, Penny for Your Thoughts.
Penny for Your Thoughts, as we close out this segment, we want to remember we lost a legend today in the baseball world. And he wasn't a legend because of how great he was on the field, but he was certainly one of the game's greatest ambassador, and he was a guy who made a 50-year broadcasting career after being signed by the old Milwaukee Braves, his hometown team, for $3,000. And he was career backup catcher, but he learned to make fun of himself, and just one of the great guys of baseball that you would ever want to meet, and that was Mr. Bob Uecker. He could make a joke off the cuff about anything. One of the great jokes is when he was doing Monday Night Baseball with Al Michaels and the late legendary Howard Cosell. And Howard, those who knew Howard Cosell, he was a lawyer prior to becoming a voice of boxing and all sports, and he used to use great big words. And one of his favorite words was when a guy was getting a little rambunctious, if you will, he's saying, "You're being awful truculent, don't you think?" And he said that to Muhammad Ali one time, and Muhammad said, well, if truculent is good, then that's me. Well, he says it one night because Howard is using all the big words and he's killing the baseball game. And then he says, you've been awful truculent to Bob Uecker. And he says, being Howard, you know what truculent means. He says, yeah, you have a truck and I come over to borrow it, so you lent me a truculent. So that was Bob Uecker, and we tip our hat to Bob Uecker because if you remember the old light beer commercial, he would be way up in the stands and they'd come and get him out, and he said, I must be in the front row. And so now, guess what? Old Bob finally gets to go to the front row. Yep. As he gets to go to the pearly gates of baseball heaven. And so we tip our hat to who he was as an announcer, as an ambassador for the game and for baseball all over Major League Baseball. And we lost a great one today at 90 years old. Rest in peace, Bob Uecker.
Absolutely. Now, did you ever get to meet him?
I did not get to meet Bob Uecker.
Oh man, that would have been amazing. I wonder if Bob Kendrick has met Bob.
I can't imagine the Brewers coming to town and Bob Uecker not going to the museum.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure he probably had a story of Satchel or somebody to go along with all of the thousands of stories that Bob has, and so and figured out a way to make it fun and to imagine he made fun when he was inducted into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame as a broadcaster. And he said they finally recognized my talent. He was just and it was, one year they had him speaking and it was totally off the cuff. There was nothing written, and he just kept people laughing for 20 minutes straight. I mean, this guy could have been a stand-up comedian. He just did it behind the microphone at a baseball game. And so he just, like I said, he was just a legend.
Absolutely. And that is a perfect ending to an awesome show, Any Given Sunday on KUAW. We are at the end of Any Given Sunday. Yes, we are running a little late, but we started a little late. So we had a great show. Looking forward to 2025. We're going to try to get some guests in here and join in with us. So absolutely. So you guys enjoy your football weekend. And as I always say, be awesome, not angry. Oh, let me forget. Coach 24, Darwin Penny, DJ Scatter, George Walker, and I am Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice. Be awesome, not angry, and you guys have yourself a phenomenal football divisional weekend. Whew. Oh, that's my cousin.